Now, with Wednesday being Valentine's Day and this week being our series on Portsmouth Bookfest, we thought, why not combine the two? And our next guest will be familiar to regular viewers as a Portsmouth-based author and musician who, as part of Bookfest, will be lifting the petticoats, so to speak, on some of the sinful goings-on in Victorian Britain. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining us once again. And I suppose my first question is, were the Victorians really as kinky as maybe we think they were?
Oh, my goodness. We have such conflicting ideas about them, don't we? We think they were really prim and proper, but we think they were filthy, dirty and evil.
Behind closed doors, obviously.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, yes, they were, but no more so than we are. I was just doing some research today on one of my panellists for this event, and her website carries a lot of vintage images from the Victorian era. And what she points out, first of all, is that they have at least as wide a range of kinks as we have. But they're somewhat more democratic about body types. There's people of all shapes and sizes. There's people smiling and relaxed and having fun rather than our own modern day behind the scenes we've got a slightly deranged idea of what sexuality has become these days.
Maybe because they didn't have Photoshop back then to kind of give them those kind of body hang-ups that maybe we do today.
That's probably right. No, absolutely. I mean, photography was in its infancy, but you wouldn't believe how quickly they explored all its possibilities.
Oh, I'm sure they did. And this kind of ties in nicely as well, because to kind of some of your own writings that maybe obviously viewers would have seen us talking about before, but actually kind of you quite like the sinful, macabre nature of this period of time.
That's right. I wrote a book about the underworld of London, the pornography, erotica and coercion. And as I was researching that, I discovered a few people who had such amazing depth of research and breadth of knowledge about it. I couldn't resist inviting them to this panel event. So I've got two fantastic academics of the history of sexuality. That's Kate Lister from Leeds Trinity University and Dr. Fern Riddell, who's advised on Ripper Street. She's written the Victorian Guide to Sex. Kate Lister curates thewhoresofyore.com, which sounds dodgy, but is highly academic, so it's worth a look. And then my last panellist is doing an audiobook of the filthiest novel ever written. It's not a novel, it's a memoir by the anonymous, pseudonymous Walter, My Secret Life. So Dominic Crawford Collins is a TV composer. He wrote the music for Ballykiss Angel and BBC Natural World. And he's now recording the longest audiobook ever, putting this all down on tape for posterity.
So some might say maybe a Victorian precursor to the 50 Shades series.
It's somewhere between 50 Shades and Pepys's diary. That's got nothing hidden and it's nothing polished as today's erotica. So it's warts and all. Yeah.
I was going to say probably back then there probably were actually a few warts on a few of these bodies as well. So.
They're described in full detail. He really doesn't leave anything out. Leaves nothing to the imagination, which is what I loved. It's what you don't get in Dickens and Dorian Gray and Jekyll and Hyde. They switch off as the man goes behind the curtain into the East End. And this one book from Victorian times that tells the whole story. So we've got the world expert on that book coming along. I'm really delighted these panellists have accepted. You know, it's lovely to have them coming to Portsmouth for the Bookfest. And
of course, this is just the first event that you're doing for Portsmouth Bookfest. I understand you've got a typewriter event happening as well.
Yeah, I couldn't resist bringing this along. I mean, the Bookfest is in full sway. We've had an anti-Valentine's event already. This is on Wednesday the 21st. I'll be in Southsea Coffee Company inviting people to try out typewriters. We'll have 4 typewriters. We'll be micro-publishing mini books with stamps and art pens, and that'll be great fun too. Retro for the people of my era who actually learned to type on them, but it's lovely seeing kids playing them. They say, oh, it prints instantly.
I think that's the thing as well. Many people will be used to kind of what we call the QWERTY style keyboard there, not realising maybe kind of the functionality of it back then was so that when you push 2 keys, they weren't going to get stuck at the other end.
That's good knowledge, and I'm worried they won't know how to unpick them, so I'll be hovering to help people do that. And the exclamation mark, where you have to do a full stop and then backspace and do an apostrophe above it.
All these little quirks and things that maybe a modern keyboard you're not quite used to. I'm sure there won't be a hashtag symbol on here, is there?
There is on the Canadian one, yeah, and you get an @@ symbol for accounting, but it's fantastic. Those kind of things I love, and people are going to really enjoy.
I suppose that's it. All the kind of the little quirks and eccentricities that maybe kind of have spilled over into kind of modern computing started here.
They did, and I mean, justification things have gone nuts these days, but it's lovely to just see it. The words appearing on the page as you type, and mistakes and all, accept them, and that's part of your the first steps of creativity.
Fantastic. Well, just remind us then before we run out of time, when and where are your events and how do we get involved?
Well, My Victorian Guide to Sex is Friday the 16th in Portsmouth University, Eldon Building at 7 p.m. The typewriter event is Wednesday the 21st in the afternoon at South Sea Coffee Company. But there's so many things going on. People should look up Portsmouth Bookfest because there's writing for children, cartoons, there's a publishing weekend, there's a journalist event, there's a mystery weekend, there's a literary walk, so there's something for everyone.
Fantastic. Will, it's always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Until next time, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rich.